AITA for refusing to give up my life to the half-brother who vanished 25 years ago. I'm an only child, or at least I thought so for over 25 years. I grew up in the suburbs of Ohio, in a pretty normal house, with a family that seemed to have things more or less under control. My folks met in college, married young, and had a relatively stable life. Not millionaires, but comfortable. My mom was a nurse, my dad sold insurance. I went to high school, worked hard, went to the local university, and moved to Columbus for work. Nothing out of the ordinary. Everything was fine until about 2 years ago, when I got that call. It was a typical Saturday. I was hungover, sprawled on the couch, watching football and eating leftover cold pizza. My old man calls me. It wasn't unusual for him to call, but his tone was weird, kind of tense, almost nervous. "We need to talk," he said. In person. I asked if everything was okay, and he said, "More or less." What really blew my mind was that he said he didn't want to tell me over the phone, that he had to see me. So, Sunday morning, I drove to my parents' house, in the same neighborhood where I grew up. Both of them were waiting for me in the kitchen. My mom's eyes were red, like she'd been crying all night. My dad looked at me like he didn't know where to start. I sat down, already sensing something big was coming, and he just dropped it on me. "You have a brother. A half-brother. He's 4 years older than you." I didn't say anything. Literally, my brain just shut down. My mom started crying again. Dad told me it was a mistake from his youth, before he married Mom, when he was dating another woman. He wouldn't even tell me her name. She got pregnant. He didn't find out until much later, when he was already with my mom. And when he did find out, the boy's mother didn't want him involved, so he let it go. He had never told me about it. Never. Not a single hint. So what now? Why are you telling me this right now? I asked, still in shock. And here's the craziest part. The guy, my supposed half-brother, had contacted him not long ago. He sent him a private message on Facebook, saying he knew he was his father, that he wanted to meet him, and that he had things to discuss. My dad hesitated for weeks, but they finally met. He showed me a picture. The guy's name is Matt. I don't know if that's his real name. That's what they told me. And yeah, he does look a bit like my dad. The jawline, the eyes, there's something there. But that wasn't what scared me. What scared me was what came next. Dad said that. At first, the conversation with him was cordial, a bit awkward, but nothing serious. But as the days went by, Matt started acting strangely, like he held some kind of resentment. He didn't say it outright, but he hinted that his life hadn't been easy, that he'd had a rough childhood, that he deserved more, that Dad had failed him, and that now he was going to make up for everything he'd missed out on. That was already pretty unsettling, but then he told me Matt had started reaching out to people in our family. He started following my mom on social media, sent a friend request to my girlfriend, whom he doesn't even know, looked up my boss on LinkedIn, sent messages to a cousin I hadn't even seen since last Christmas, all under the guise of wanting to get to know his family. But there was something off about the tone of the messages. And here came the final bombshell of that visit. My dad, visibly ashamed, told me Matt had asked for more than just time to catch up. He asked for money. A significant amount. Not like temporary help. No. He said something like, "I'm entitled to a share of everything you never gave me." As if he could retroactively charge for the years of absence. And I don't know how or why, but my dad agreed. He transferred him a sum he wouldn't tell me exactly, but from his expression, it looked like 5 figures. I was completely floored. All I could do was sit there, feeling like an idiot, like I'd been living a borrowed life and now someone was coming to claim their share. I got up without saying much. I told them to let me know if anything else happened and drove back to Columbus, with no music on, my stomach churning. That's where it all started. Because I thought the worst was over, that it would be an awkward moment, a family drama that would eventually fade away, but I was wrong. That was just the first blow. The real nightmare began when Matt decided he didn't just want to know Dad. He wanted to know me too. After that talk with my folks, I didn't sleep well for weeks. Every time I thought about that guy, about Matt, my stomach would clench. Not exactly out of fear, but a weird mix of revulsion, discomfort, and something like resentment. Who the heck was this guy to show up out of the blue? Kick down the door to the life we built, and demand his place as if it were an inherited right. I tried to stick to my routine, work, gym, seeing my girlfriend on weekends, the occasional beer with friends, but everything was tinged with a heavy feeling. Every time my phone vibrated, I thought it would be him. Every time the apartment doorbell rang, I braced myself to see his face on the other side. And it didn't take long. It was a Wednesday, 7:13 p.m. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in my apartment, watching some random show with a beer in hand and a plate of leftover Chinese food. There was a knock at the door. Not the doorbell, no. Knocks. 3 sharp ones. I got up without thinking, opened it, and there he was. He didn't need to say his name. I knew instantly. I'd already seen his face in the photo Dad showed me, but in person, there was something else. I don't know if it was the way he looked at me, like he was sizing me up, or that forced smile that seemed plastered on his face without conviction. He said, "Hi, I'm Matt." Like it was a Tinder date. I stood there silent for a few seconds, completely frozen. I asked him how he knew where I lived. He said he'd asked Dad, that he'd told him he wanted to meet me, wanted to connect, that he didn't want to go through life without knowing who his brother was. I told him it wasn't a good time, that I'd rather not talk right now, but he insisted. He asked for 10 minutes, said he just wanted to introduce himself, that he owed me that much. I crossed my arms, looked down the hall, took a deep breath, and like a fool, I let him in. We sat on the couch. He looked around at everything like a tourist. The painting my mom gave me, the coat rack that always wobbles, the mismatched glasses I've had since college. "You've got good taste," he commented, as if that mattered. Then came the typical speech, how he'd had a tough life, grew up with an unstable mother, changed schools 5 times, never had a father figure, all delivered in a calculated tone, as if he knew exactly what to say to evoke pity. But I didn't feel pity. I felt uncomfortable. Not because he had a troubled childhood. I had my own issues, who doesn't? But because I sensed some kind of ulterior motive behind it all, like deep down he wasn't talking to me, but to an idealized version of what he thinks was stolen from him, as if I were the symbol of everything he never had. And it didn't take long for him to show his true colors. "Must be great having grown up with Dad, huh?" he said, staring hard at me. "Going on vacation, playing catch, him teaching you how to drive, all that." I shrugged. "It wasn't as ideal as you think," I told him. "My folks worked all day, and most of the time, I was alone." But he didn't care. He'd already constructed his version of the story. I was the spoiled kid, the one who had everything, who lived the life he deserved. He asked if I had siblings. I said no. He looked at me, smiled, and said, "You do now." That sentence literally sent shivers down my spine. Then he started asking personal questions, too personal. Where exactly I worked, what car I drove, if I made good money, if I lived alone. All said with a casual smile, but the content was far too invasive. I started answering with monosyllables. Yes, sort of, I don't know. But he wasn't getting the hint, or didn't want to, until my patience ran out. I told him, respectfully, that I appreciated him coming by, but that I wasn't interested in having a relationship, that I wished him the best. But to me, he was a stranger. That I didn't hate him, but I didn't want him in my life either. That this wasn't a movie, and we weren't going to hug it out in a happy ending with background music. His smile vanished instantly. He stared at me, stood up slowly, and said, "All right, I just wanted to give you the chance." And he left. Right then, I thought it was over, that the guy had realized he didn't belong and was going to disappear. Again, I was wrong. 2 weeks went by with no news, and then the real trouble started. First, it was an email at work, an anonymous message sent to HR, claiming I was using the company computer for personal purposes. False, but I still got a formal warning. Then, my girlfriend received a message from a fake account warning her I was cheating, complete with edited screenshots of chats that never happened. She was furious, but luckily, she believed me. Next, my personal email inbox started flooding with weird subscriptions, adult sites, online games, gambling sites. Over 200 emails a day. My Instagram account was reported and suspended for suspicious activity. I got banned from Uber Eats. Pizzas I didn't order showed up at my door. Taxis arrived at all hours. Calls from hidden numbers came at 3 a.m. It was hell. And the worst part, I had no proof, nothing that allowed me to say it's Matt. But I knew it. I felt it. I was being attacked from the shadows, like my life was being dismantled piece by piece. I went to see my dad. I told him everything. And there, his face pale as paper, he confessed something that made my blood run cold. "I think Matt is living in Columbus. He moved here a few weeks ago." When my dad told me Matt had moved to Columbus, it felt like a bucket of ice water had been thrown over me. He didn't say it in those exact words, It was more like, I think he's around here. He texted me from a local area code number. Deep down, I already knew he hadn't left, but suspecting it is one thing, having it confirmed is another. That was the breaking point. Until then, everything had been annoying, invasive, messed up, but distant. When I understood I could run into him at any moment, that he could be a block away or in the same coffee shop, again, something inside me shifted. I became paranoid. I started double-checking if the apartment door was locked. I stopped going to my usual gym. I changed the route I took to work. My girlfriend said I was overreacting, but she didn't know the full story. She hadn't read the messages I was getting, hadn't felt that weird energy in my apartment when Matt sat on my couch like he owned the place. I tried to be logical. I went to the police. I told them everything. The family history, the messages, the visits, the digital invasion, the fake emails, the sabotage attempts. They listened, took notes, but at the end of the day, they said the usual. Unless there's a direct threat or a provable crime, there's not much we can do. Basically, until the guy physically harms me or steals something from me, I just have to watch him dismantle my life with a smile. And the worst part is, that's exactly what started happening. One Friday, I left work and went straight to the parking lot. It was already dark, not many people around. When I got to my car, I noticed one of the tires was low. I crouched down, looked closely, and saw something that sent a chill down my spine. A nail, deliberately stuck in it. Not a nail I'd run over by accident. One placed there maliciously. On the windshield, a handwritten note. Sometimes you have to flatten something to make it stop. No name, of course, but who else could it have been? I spent that weekend at my girlfriend's place. I didn't tell her anything, just said I needed a change of scenery, and thankfully, she didn't ask questions. But inside, I was already planning to move. I wasn't going to let this guy feel like he had power over me. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Nor was I going to keep feeding him information for his sick game. I asked a friend to help me find a new apartment, and within 2 weeks, I was signing the lease for a place on the other side of the city. I changed my number, closed all my personal accounts, opened a new email address under a fake name, even updated my bank info. Everything. I felt like someone in witness protection. For a moment, I thought I'd finally left him behind. But Matt was always one step ahead. One night, already in the new apartment, I received a letter. Yes, a physical letter addressed to my new fake name. I opened the envelope, and inside was a photo of me, walking down the street wearing headphones, alone, clearly taken with a zoom lens. On the back, a single word handwritten, "Precious." That night, I slept with a knife on my nightstand. That's when I understood this wasn't a story of two brothers with conflicts. It wasn't a nuanced family drama. This was something else. This was pure and simple stalking. He wasn't trying to become part of my life. He was trying to take it over. And that's when I did what I had been avoiding from day one. I confronted him. I texted his number from a borrowed phone, without identifying myself. I wrote, "Meet me at the bar on Broadgrant tomorrow, 8 p.m. I know you'll come." And he came. I was already there, at a table in the back, with a camera recording everything from my jacket pocket. He arrived on time, with that same attitude as always, like it was a business meeting or a casual date. He sat down, looked at me, smiled. "I knew you'd show up," he said. I didn't say anything for a few seconds, just watched him, analyzing every detail. His clothes, his gaze, the way he adjusted the glass of water the waiter brought him without him asking. And then I said it. "You need help." That broke the spell. His smile twisted slightly, as if he hadn't expected me to be so direct. He replied, "I don't need anything. I'm fine. I'm just taking back what's mine." And then I asked him what that meant, what exactly he was taking back. Because he didn't have my name, my house, my friends, my job, my history. His answer was what chilled me to the bone. "What I'm taking back is the place that was stolen from me. Don't you see it yet? You're not the son Dad was supposed to have. You were just the replacement. I came first." I don't know how I didn't lash out at him right then and there. Not out of hatred, but because of the coldness with which he said it. As if he was convinced, as if he truly believed it, as if I were just a spare part in his narrative of a vengeful victim. I told him this was the last time we'd see each other, that if he ever came near me again, I would present everything I had, messages, photos, emails, to the police. That this wasn't a game anymore, and that if he really thought ruining my life would give him his own back, he was lying to himself more than anyone had ever lied to me. He stood up, looked at me one last time, and said something that still haunts me. "You can stop playing." "I can't." I got the call after 11 p.m. I was in bed, unable to sleep, replaying the conversation with Matt at the bar over and over when the phone rang. It was my mom. She never calls that late. Never. I answered, and all I heard was, "Your dad's in the hospital. He'd had a heart attack." I don't remember how I got dressed or how I got there. I know I was at the hospital in less than 30 minutes. The emergency room smelled like cheap disinfectant and desperation. When I saw her, sitting in a plastic chair with wide, stunned eyes, I knew it was more serious than I thought. She stood up, hugged me without a word, and we stayed like that for a few seconds, me trying not to break down, her completely devastated. We didn't know much. Only that Dad had been home alone, felt a sharp pain in his chest, and managed to call 911 before collapsing. That the paramedics arrived just in time, that he was alive, but unstable. The silence in that waiting room was unbearable. And then, in the midst of that hell, he showed up, Matt. He walked down the hallway as if he belonged there, with that strange confidence he has, like the whole world owes him something. When I saw him, it felt like the air got thicker. My mom looked at him without recognizing him at first, then it dawned on her. "What are you doing here?" It was the only thing she managed to say. Matt stopped a few feet away, didn't come closer. He looked at my mother, then at me. "I came to see how he is. I'm his son too, aren't I?" That's when I almost physically threw him out of the hospital. I stood up and walked towards him, not shouting, but making it crystal clear that this was neither the time nor the place. I told him to leave, that nobody wanted him here, and that he wasn't part of anything. Not this family, not this situation. And then he said something that froze me in my tracks. What if it was because of me? What if this happened because of everything I said to him last week? My mom looked at him, confused. I looked at him with rage. "What the hell did you say to him?" I demanded. Matt glanced down for a second. Nothing out of line. "I just asked for what's mine." I told him he couldn't keep ignoring me, that if he didn't want to be my father, he'd have to face that. But I didn't think he'd take it like this. My mom exploded. She lunged towards him, not to hit him, but with tears streaming down her face, yelling at him that he had no idea everything that man carried, that the last few months had been torture, that he lived with guilt, with fear, that he wasn't sleeping, that he was sad, that he felt like a failure as a father. Matt stood there in silence. I took him by the arm and led him down the hall. I told him, as calmly as I could manage, that if he really felt guilty, the least he could do was leave and not cause any more trouble. That if he had a shred of humanity, he should disappear from our lives forever. That the man in intensive care didn't need more chaos, just peace. He left, this time without arguing. I didn't see him again for weeks. My dad survived, barely. The heart attack was serious, but the doctors acted fast. He spent several days in intensive care, then moved to a regular room. When I could finally see him, he was pale, exhausted, hooked up to tubes and wires. He squeezed my hand hard, as if to say, "I'm still here." We didn't talk much, it wasn't necessary. But we did talk on the third day, when he could sit up a bit, when my mom stepped out to get coffee. He looked at me and said, "It's my fault. I let him in, and I ruined everything." I told him no, that he just wanted to do the right thing. But he insisted. I tried to make up for a lifetime of absence in a few months. I gave him information, I gave him money, and I didn't see it coming. He used me, and I let him. I didn't know what to say. The only thing clear was that, from the day Matt appeared, our lives had been altered as if by a silent earthquake, the kind that doesn't knock everything down at once, but slowly loosens the foundations until nothing holds together anymore. During my dad's recovery, the tension at home was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My mom didn't want to talk about it, neither did I, but the silence was almost louder than any argument. One day, she walked into the living room with her phone in her hand. She showed it to me without a word. It was a message from Matt. "I know I'm not welcome, but I want to see him. Just once. If you don't let me, I understand, but I don't want to live without having told him how I feel. It's not even anger. I just need to say goodbye." We didn't know if it was manipulation or genuine remorse. My mother looked at me and asked, "What do we do?" I didn't know how to answer. For the first time, I was hesitant too. Because yes, I hated him, but a part of me couldn't help feeling that this monster who had wreaked havoc might just be screaming from a deep hole, a hole no one pulled him out of when he was a kid. And the question haunts me to this day. What do you do when the enemy of your life is also your brother? Nobody said it out loud, but we all knew letting him see my father could be a mistake. Not because of the act itself, but because of what it might trigger in him. Dad was fragile, medically stable, yes, but emotionally shattered. He wasn't the same man I'd known my whole life. He was subdued, defeated. And bringing Matt back could be like lighting a match near a gas tank. But at the same time, what if it really was his goodbye? What if he needed closure, even if it was just one conversation? It was my mom who finally brought it up directly to my dad. He texted, "He wants to see you. He says just once. Do you want to?" My dad remained silent. He was in bed, the heart monitor marking that slow, steady rhythm. He stared at the ceiling, as if searching for an answer written on the tiles. Then he looked at us, first me, then her, and said, "Yes. Let him come. Just once. And I don't want either of you present." We tried to convince him it wasn't a good idea for him to be alone, but he was firm. "I need to do this. If he's going to say something, I want to hear it myself. No one else." So, it was arranged for Saturday afternoon. We authorized him to enter as a visitor. He signed the papers. They checked him at the hospital entrance per protocol, and they let him pass. I went for a walk around the grounds. I couldn't stay inside. The thought of Matt in that room with my dad churned my stomach, but at the same time, I had to respect the decision. It wasn't just my story, it was theirs too. Almost 40 minutes passed before I went back. Matt was already gone. I entered the room. My dad had his eyes closed, but was awake. He was breathing deeply, his hands folded across his chest. He wasn't speaking. I sat beside him and waited a few minutes. Then he opened his eyes and said, "I told him it wasn't his fault, that I made bad decisions, that I shut him out because of fear, not malice." I nodded without saying anything. But I also told him that the damage he's caused now can't be fixed. I asked what Matt had replied. My dad sighed. He said he thought that if he ruined my life, he'd finally feel some sense of control, that he would force me to look at him, to acknowledge him. I didn't know what to say. I told him I saw him, that I'd seen him all along, even when I tried not to, that his anger wasn't invisible. It was just sad, very sad. Then my dad slowly turned his head towards me and said something I wasn't expecting. "He looks like you, more than you think. He has your way of talking when he gets angry. And when he leaves, he walks the same way." I felt a lump in my throat. I went to the bathroom and spent a long time looking at myself in the mirror, as if searching my reflection for some sign that it was true. The following week was strange. We heard nothing more from Matt. Nothing. Not a message, not an email, not a sign. As if he had vanished. And part of me wondered if that meeting had truly been his farewell, or just a pause in his plan. With him, you never knew. Dad was discharged after 10 days. He returned home weak, but alive, determined not to waste any more time. He formally retired that same month, something he'd been putting off for years, and started organizing what he called his legacy. He asked my mother and me to help him sort out accounts, papers, wills, things like that. That's when the rift appeared. Because among those papers was a letter addressed to Matt. He didn't show it to us, but he told us he wanted to leave him something. Not a fortune, because he didn't have one, but something. Not for him, for me. To close what I left open for 30 years. I exploded. I told him he was crazy, that Matt didn't deserve anything, that he had stalked me, harassed me, manipulated us, that we couldn't reward someone like that. My mom also tried to make him see reason, reminded him of all the times he felt guilty about the heart attack, all the tears she'd shed. But my dad was clear. I'm not leaving him anything out of pity or guilt. I'm leaving it because if I die without settling this, you too will carry that void. And I don't want you to do that. Not anymore. I didn't answer, because deep down, he had a point, but I couldn't help the anger. The following weeks, I tried to get back to normal, or something like it. My girlfriend was a rock through this whole process. She put up with my mood swings, my paranoia, my silence. One night, she even said to me, "What if someday you're the one who makes a mistake that big? Wouldn't you want someone, at least one person, to give you another chance?" I didn't answer because I didn't know what to say. And so that summer came to an end. Matt didn't reappear, but he left a mark. Not just on my family, but on me. Because I started thinking about things I'd never considered before. How fragile your identity can be. How a story you didn't even live through can define you. How easy it is to hate someone when you don't see them as human. how hard it is to forgive when it still hurts. And then something happened that changed everything again. A new message from an email address I didn't recognize. It just said, "I haven't left. I'm just waiting for the right moment." That email sent a chill down my spine. I haven't left. I'm just waiting for the right moment. After weeks of not hearing anything from Matt, after thinking he had finally disappeared, that message landed like a stone in my chest. At that point, I was trying to rebuild my routine, my mind, my life. Trying to sleep better, focus on work, go running without looking over my shoulder. I wasn't okay, but I was moving forward. Until that damn message. I didn't know if it was a threat, a provocation, or just another way to mess with my head. Because that's what Matt did. He got into your thoughts, settled into the cracks of your fear, and started squeezing until he broke you from the inside. Never direct, always from the shadows. I didn't reply. I didn't forward it. I didn't tell my dad, my mom, or my girlfriend. I kept it to myself, out of shame, exhaustion, a mix of I don't want to talk about this anymore, and if I ignore it, maybe it'll go away. But it didn't go away. A few days later, again. This time it was a physical message. A postcard. Yes, a freaking postcard, like we were in the 90s. On the front, a picture of Lake Erie. On the back, in blue ink. There are places where everything can be reset. You're lucky to have family. I had to invent mine. That, I had to invent mine, left me shaking. He was telling me, without saying it, that he was still alone, that he hadn't given up, that his version of family didn't include love or understanding, just need and constant rage. After that, I heard nothing more for a whole month, until everything blew up. It was a Tuesday, 8:30 a.m. I got a call from work, but not for anything routine, no. They called me from the HR department. "Can you come to the office right now?" I walked into the room, and there were 3 people, my direct supervisor, a woman from legal, and a guy I'd never seen before. They had a folder on the table. I sat down, confused. They told me they had received a serious complaint, that someone had contacted them with documents implicating me in illegal activities, minor fraud, forgery. I couldn't believe it. They showed me screenshots of emails I had supposedly sent, emails with my name from an account almost identical to mine, just a hyphen difference in the address. The signatures were the same, the writing style similar, they even used phrases I often used internally. They claimed I had leaked client data to a third-party company, that I'd been paid for it. It was all false, completely fabricated, but they had done it so meticulously that it was hard to disprove. The first thing I did was deny everything, of course. The second was to request a full audit. Luckily, my internal history was clean. There was no concrete evidence linking me directly to it. But the stain was already there. HR put me under internal review for 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were hell. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't talk to anyone. I knew it was him, that he had landed his blow. He wasn't after money. He wasn't after affection. He just wanted to ruin me. That's all. After 2 weeks, I was cleared. They apologized, said it was an unprecedented situation, and that they were reinforcing security. They gave me back access to everything, but the damage was already done. Trust was broken. My colleagues looked at me strangely, some distanced themselves. It was like I'd gone through an invisible trial, and even though I'd been acquitted, the smell of suspicion still lingered. I went home that day and destroyed everything related to him. Photos, emails, notes. I sat down with my girlfriend and told her everything. What was happening, what had already happened, what I feared still might happen. She looked at me in silence for half an hour. Then she hugged me and said something I didn't expect. "We need to leave. For real. Start over from scratch." At first, I resisted. My job, my friends, my family, my routine, everything was there. But after everything that had happened, I realized there wasn't much left of that life anyway. Everything worth keeping could come with me. The rest was already ruined. So I started looking for remote work. She did the same. And a month later, we moved to another state. I won't say which one, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we closed that chapter with a slam of the door. I left letters for my parents explaining I needed space. I left them my new email address, nothing more. No physical address, no social media, nothing he could track. I thought that was the end of it. And for a good while it was. We started a quiet life, a smaller place, greener, less noise. For the first time in years, I could look out the window without expecting to see someone lurking. I slept without knives nearby. I started reading again, writing again, just being again. Until a week ago, something changed. I received a package with no return address at the new address I hadn't given to anyone. Yes, to anyone. I opened it with trembling hands, and inside was something that churned my soul. A photo of my girlfriend walking in the park, and on the back, handwritten, "Family is built. I wonder how long it will take for yours to break." The photo of my girlfriend broke everything. Until that moment, all the chaos had been directed at me, against me, my history, my job, my mental health. But that image, her walking peacefully, with headphones on, unaware that someone was following her, watching her, capturing that moment, it changed the rules of the game. Because now it wasn't just my story, it was ours. And he knew it. I felt a different kind of rage. It wasn't fear, it wasn't frustration. It was a primitive, deep fury that squeezed my chest as if dragging me to the bottom of something dark. I held on to it in silence. I didn't show it to her at first. I just locked it in a drawer and sat on the bed, staring at the wall for almost an hour. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't move again. I couldn't live wondering if every knock on the door might be him, with a smile and another veiled threat. So I made a decision. I went to the police again. This time with more evidence. The photo, the package, the previous complaints, the fake emails, the interference at my old job. A younger, perhaps more empathetic officer listened seriously. He called a female colleague over, and they asked me to give them everything I had, in writing, with dates and details. They had me fill out a report. They told me that with the photo of my girlfriend, it was no longer just harassment towards me, that there were enough elements to open a formal investigation for stalking, that they could try to trace the address the package was sent from, that they needed time. I didn't get my hopes up. I'd learned not to expect too much from anyone. But something in that officer's tone made me feel, for the first time, that someone was taking it seriously, that it wasn't just a drama between brothers. I returned home with that minimal sense of relief. My girlfriend saw something different in me that night. I told her everything. I showed her the photo, told her who Matt was, what he had done, what had happened with my family, my job, what I had been hiding for months. She didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't question me. She just came closer and said, "Now I understand why sometimes you'd go quiet before bed, with that faraway look in your eyes." Then she asked me something that left me speechless. "What do you think he really wants from you?" And I didn't know what to say, because I never knew. Not even now. A week later, I received an email. This time with a full name, his name, Matt. The subject line read, "Last letter." The body of the message was long, written like an emotional testament, or a confession, or a bomb. I'll summarize what it said because if I transcribe it word for word, it makes me sick. He said he had always hated me without knowing me, that he grew up with the idea that someone else was occupying his place, that his mother raised him alone, frustrated, telling him over and over that his father had chosen another family, that he wasn't enough, but I was, that when he found us, he thought he could steal my life, not literally, but symbolically, that if he messed me up, maybe he'd feel less alone, less empty, that if he took away what I had, he'd finally feel complete. But he didn't succeed because, in his words, "Even destroying you didn't make me feel any fuller." And then came the most disturbing part. He said he had tried to hurt other people before, not physically, but emotionally, that he was good at manipulating, making others feel guilty, pushing them to the edge, that he had done it with ex-girlfriends, co-workers, even his own mother, that destroying things was the only thing he was good at, and that now he understood he didn't want that anymore, that he wanted to disappear. Literally. The last paragraph was unsettling. Don't look for answers. Don't look for justice. What comes next is no longer your story, it's mine. You go on with your life. I won't be in it anymore. I closed the email and sat in silence for an hour, maybe two. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel pity. Just a strange emptiness, like when a weird movie ends, and you don't know if you liked it or if it just ruined your day. I showed it to the police. They said they would continue to monitor the situation, but until something concrete happened, they couldn't do much more. That he would probably leave town or change his identity. I didn't know whether to believe him, whether to trust him, but I made a promise to myself. I would not live in fear again. Not ever again. I changed my routine, protected what was mine, invested in cameras, better locks, digital backups, security systems. I talked to a therapist. My girlfriend did too. We started setting boundaries, naming the trauma, not hiding what happened. And for the first time in a long time, I slept through the entire night. 6 months passed since that last email. Not another message, not a letter, not a postcard. Matt disappeared. But that doesn't mean the story ended. Because I still wake up sometimes with the feeling that he's still out there, in some corner, watching, waiting for me to let my guard down. And then I remember my dad's words the last time we talked about it. Blood doesn't make family. Decisions do. 6 months. That was the time that passed without a single sign from Matt. No messages, no emails, no traces. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole. At first, that absence felt like a trap, as if he were hiding in some corner of my life, waiting for the slightest crack to slip back in. But as the weeks went by, something started to change in me. It wasn't fast, it wasn't clean, but it was real. I began to believe that maybe, truly, he was gone. It felt like when a noise you've been hearing for a long time finally stops. One so constant you'd gotten used to it. And when it disappears, your head falls silent, but your body still vibrates, taking time to understand that the disturbance is no longer there. My life with my girlfriend started to find a kind of new rhythm, a different one. Not better, not worse, just different. More cautious, more alert, sometimes heavier, yes, but more real too. We don't talk about Matt every day, but his shadow was felt in many decisions we made. In the new locks, the two-factor authentication passwords, the way we answered the doorbell. And that hurt more than I could admit, because someone I didn't know, someone I didn't ask for, someone who didn't even share my childhood, had managed to reconfigure me from the inside out. Sometimes I wondered if the problem was just Matt, or if the problem was me. My therapist asked me a question I didn't know how to answer. Do you feel guilty for not accepting him as a brother? And the answer was yes, a little. But I also felt guilty for having allowed myself to believe, even for a moment, that it could ever work, as if I'd momentarily forgotten everything he did, everything he put at risk. Because that's the trap of blood ties. When they appear, even after years, they bring with them the illusion that maybe they can be something authentic, something reparable, something worthwhile. But it's not always possible. And that was my conclusion. Not all stories have redemption, not all broken people get fixed, not all scars have to become tattoos. Some just remain, and over time, you get used to them being there. I saw my parents again recently. My dad is calmer, more serene. He walks slower, thinks before speaking, but he has a look in his eyes I haven't seen in years, as if he's no longer indebted to his past. He told me he left instructions that if Matt ever shows up again, they should receive him with respect, but without expectations. I don't want them to hate him, but I don't want them to forget what he did either. Fair, tough, but fair. My mom is in a different place. She simply doesn't want to know anything more. She told me she feels ashamed for having been afraid of someone she didn't even raise, that she felt her home invaded, her history questioned, her motherhood put in doubt, that the only son she acknowledges is me. She said it with pain, but also with certainty. I keep writing. That saved me. Not in a romantic sense, not like those writing as therapy speeches. It saved me because it allowed me to organize the chaos, to put names to things that were previously just internal screams, to turn the hell into words. And in those words, to reconnect with parts of myself I thought were lost. I also started running again, same routine, same park, now in another state. The body, for some reason, remembers what it feels like to be free. Sometimes, while I run, I imagine Matt is behind me, following me like before. But then I leave him behind. Literally, I overtake him, leave him in the dust, until he becomes just a faint shadow among the trees. Where is he now? I don't know. Maybe he found another family to blame. Maybe he's alone. Maybe, just maybe, he's genuinely trying to start over. And if he is, I hope he succeeds. Not for his sake, but for the people around him, so they don't have to go through what we went through. But that's not my story anymore, and I don't intend to ever let it be again. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.